All right, those are Bharti Airtel's numbers which are flashing for you on your screen. The company has reported a net profit of 1,461 crore, and that compares with our poll of 1,050 crore. But I think what I can see on my screen is a profit figure of 1,651 crore. So we'll just wait for the actual profit number to get confirmed, which is coming in. But the bottom line, which is coming, I think it's 16,115 crore. 1,615 crore appears to be on the higher side. The company's net profit appears to be 24,671 crore, and that is slightly lower than what the street was anticipating. With respect to the mobile revenues in India, the company has delivered 14,735 crore, and those would be lower on a quarter-on-quarter basis. So I'm just trying to get hold of all these numbers. They would imply a decline of nearly 1.8% on a quarter-on-quarter basis, while with respect to Africa, it's 5,304 crore. So that's another number that we have, and that is a decline of nearly 15% seen on a quarter-on-quarter basis. So that looks like a bit of a miss. So the revenues appear to be slightly softer than what we were anticipating. India revenues have seen a decline of 1.8%, while the Africa revenues too have fallen by nearly 15% in rupee terms. But that was expected because the Nigerian currency, that's Naira, had seen a 13% depreciation in the quarter gone by on a sequential basis. And Nigeria is an important piece of the puzzle for Africa, contributing nearly 30% to their overall revenues. So the numbers that we have, marginally softer on the top line. The company's delivered 24,671 crore. That's a drop of 3.5% seen on a quarter-on-quarter basis. We were expecting the revenues to be flat, but the company's managed to beat our expectations on the profitability. These are the only details that we have. We still don't have what the company's done by way of margins. We're just trying to get that up for you on your screen. We also don't know what they have. I think the consolidated EBITDA, as per the release that the company has sent, is at 9,466 crore, and that would be a big beat compared to street expectations. At 9,466 crore, their margins would be at 38.4%. So quickly to run you through the basic numbers that we're getting in right now, the company has reported a decline in the revenues, but margins have expanded by nearly 80 basis points on a quarter-on-quarter basis, and that is driving a beat in the profitability at 1,461 crore. It's flat on a quarter-on-quarter basis, but it is better than street expectations, and that is driven by a Nigerian. That is driven on account of the margin beat. The company, I'm just reading from the press release, they've indicated that the consolidated revenues have been muted. They have been muted by 3.3% on account of a full quarter impact of the Nigerian currency devaluation. And that apart, for the Africa business, two of their operations, that is in Sierra Leone as well as Burkina Faso, the company had sold it, which is why their revenues in Africa have been a bit muted. These are the details that we have. They've indicated that, the margins in both the geographies have expanded. So the net interest cost has come in at 1,603 crore. Oh, these are some internals. What we're trying to get flashed on the screen is if we have any indication of what the volume growth is, what the pricing performance has been. But as of now, the details that we have, revenues miss, margins beat, margins expanding by nearly 80 basis points. Margins in both India as well as Africa have increased. That drives a profit beat. But with respect to the revenue miss, the key reason for revenue miss is one, of course, India has been also subdued. India revenues have declined by 1.8% on a quarter-on-quarter basis, but the Africa revenues have fallen by 15% QOQ, and there are two key reasons for that. One, of course, is the Nigerian currency devaluation, and secondly, because the company had divested their operations in two African countries. One is Sierra Leone, and the other one is in Burkina Faso. So there would be no revenues coming in from these two operations. So it's a combination of these two factors which has resulted in African revenues falling by nearly 15%. Let's let's try getting in reactions. Naveen Kulkarni of Phillip Capital joins us on the phone. Naveen, a very good margin defense from Bharti Airtel, 38.4%. Are the numbers looking better than estimates for you? How do they compare with yours?
See, the margin, the EBITDA numbers definitely look much better than expectations. So we were expecting around 9,200 odd crores of EBITDA. They have delivered 94, 60 odd.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a beat. Revenue are little soft, but that was expected with Idea reporting softer numbers. So not much of a negative surprise on the revenue front, but definitely a big surprise on the EBITDA numbers.
Okay, what could have led to such a big beat on the company's margin performance? And do you have any more details on what they have done by way of volumes as well as pricing?
We do not have the details yet, but
Okay.
I think cost management has been pretty strong in this quarter, so that's why the numbers on the margin are pretty strong.
Yes, the company has been improving its margins for the last few quarters. Just to give you a comparison on a year, in the last 1 year, in Q2 FY16, the company's margins were at 34.7%. Then they improved to 35.2%. They further increased to 36.8%, then to 37.5%, and now to 38.4%, which means in a span of just exactly on a year-on-year basis, the company's margins have expanded by 370 basis points. So that's the point Naveen has been making, that the company has been defending and improving their margins solidly, and that is going to go down well with the street. And this would compare with an Idea Cellular, where the margins were actually under pressure. Bhavesh Gandhi also joins us on the phone line. Bhavesh, mixed quarter in a way because the revenues have missed even as the margins have beat. How do you think the stock will react tomorrow?
Yes, the EBITDA numbers were a beat on our expectations. We expected close to around 36.5%, 37% EBITDA margin, and clearly what has come up has beaten expectations, and so has the profit. I'm not so sure. I think revenue numbers were pretty much in line with our estimates. We had expected a sequential revenue decline, and that is what has come from the looks of it. But yes, given the EBITDA and the PAT beat, assuming that there are no one-off gains and so on and so forth, the stock should see some positive bias tomorrow.
It already went up in today's trade, Bhavesh. In fact, ahead of the numbers, Bharti Airtel had moved up close to about 1.5% to 2%. Do you think there is still more upside in the numbers tomorrow itself?
It's difficult to comment on the day-to-day kind of a movement, but on a more fundamental basis, we have a buy on the stock, and we would be sticking to that post the numbers.
Okay. Yes, indeed. We await more details. Prakash Diwan also joins us now. Prakash, your initial reaction on Bharti's Q2 numbers?
So, what seems like have happened is, remember, this 40% beat on the profit would have seemed, really extraordinary had the top line or had the revenue been also beyond expectation. But I think the only reason why margin improvement and profits seem, much better than what we had penciled in is two factors. One is the rental costs that they have been kind of, structurally reducing. And that's one of the things that also reflected in the Infratel numbers, if you see. That's kind of finally paid off now in terms of managing the costs, as Naveen also probably mentioned earlier. And my sense is the final profit number has been bloated beyond just the EBITDA improvement because of the the interest reduction that they would have also. So we're waiting for the internals to see whether that's actually happened the way they had, alluded some time back. Remember one thing, Bharti on an absolute basis is the key beneficiary of any transmission of lower interest costs. And that's something which will keep on getting factored in. What this does is makes your operation come back to an efficiency in spite of no operating leverage on the sales growth not being there. So especially India revenue would kind of compensate for any kind of a miss in the sub-Saharan market. So my sense is the market will take this quite positively. They've done much better than the kind of gloom doom kind of impression that Idea had created for the rest of the incumbents apart from LGU.
Okay, as of now at least, the finance costs seem to be largely unchanged on a quarter-on-quarter basis. But yes, the numbers, at least from an execution point of view, appear to be superior than Idea. And Bharti, anyway, has been outperforming Idea Cellular in terms of its stock performance. Naveen, your sense on the stock reactions tomorrow as well as in the coming few days?
Yeah, so our sense is that the stock should react positively because there is a lot of negativity which has been built up because of Geo launch and thereafter Idea's numbers which were not that good. And I believe that with these numbers, when people were expecting that estimates are going to be cut significantly, there could still be marginal cut because of probably voice RPM or data revenues may not be that great. But even then, the cut in estimates that probably the market would have been factoring in, that would get mitigated quite a bit. So, and the stock is at a reasonable level. So I think that there could be some bit of allocation which could start happening, at least for Bharti Airtel, when most of the market participants have been considering this sector to be quite sluggish for a while now.
Yes, you know, Bharti this year in 2016 has fallen 8.5% versus an Idea Cellular which has fallen 48%, which means Bharti has outperformed an Idea Cellular by nearly 40% in 2016. That's on account of the fact that the company's financial performance has also been superior to Idea Cellular. It's much bigger in size, its balance sheet is much stronger, and that's the reason why investors, at least in the telecom space, seem to be preferring Bharti Airtel over an Idea Cellular, and that's the reason why Bharti's outperformed in Idea by nearly 40%. As of now, you know, the company has not sent us a release which gives you greater details, granular details on how the individual businesses have done. So typically in India, you would know what the voice volume growth is, what the voice pricing is, what the data volume, data pricing is, even on the Africa side of the business. So those details are still awaited, but primarily on the basic numbers that we have, it is an execution beat delivered by Bharti Airtel with their margins expanding by 370 basis points on a year-on-year basis. So that is the big story for Airtel. Africa has been under pressure, but that would be on expected lines. Naveen, were there any disappointments based on the basic numbers that we have? Anything in the internals that you've spotted which appear to be a tad lower than your expectations?
See, the mobiles business, the India mobile services segment is a little lower. So that I would believe is something which I would say a marginal negative surprise. But we'll have to wait and see what exactly are the numbers for each of the segments before taking a broader call.
Okay. You're referring to the India mobile revenues, which have fallen by almost 1.8% on a quarter-on-quarter basis. Is that what you're referring to?
That's the segment that I'm referring to, Mobile Services India segment. That numbers are a little lower. Africa was expected because of the two reasons that you also spotted. So, but we'll have to see what exactly has driven this number, which is slightly slower, because in this quarter, if you see Airtel business numbers are up on a sequential basis, which have held up the revenues, whereas Mobile Services India segment are a tad slower. But again, then after cost management has been pretty strong, which has held up the EBITDA number. So it's a little bit of mixed bag on the revenue front, but even then I would still say the numbers are pretty strong for the company.
Prakash, anything in the internals that you've spotted?
No, so if the interest cost hasn't really changed, then that's again something that leads to the fact that then it's more to do with the efficiencies that they would have created on the other things, which has led to this profitability. So my sense is this number could probably stir some sort of a short covering bout tomorrow morning, but not necessarily a fresh pickup in allocations immediately, because the headwinds are still very strong, and if voice is not really something that's come up to the mark for Bharti and come to the rescue for the India business, then it only could go down as the numbers percolate for subsequent quarters. So I would believe the stock would probably offer an opportunity, somebody who is willing to get out at slightly better levels, because of the short covering that could predicated on these numbers.
Okay, actually on the margin front, We're now getting internal details. We highlighted how the overall margins have expanded by nearly 80 basis points to come in at 38.3, 38.4%, while they managed to maintain their India margins. The street was expecting a margin decline in their India business on account of the fact that their revenues would have declined because of seasonality. But despite lower revenues for the India business, they've managed to maintain their margins at 42.4%. With respect to Africa, the Africa margins have improved to 23.1% versus 22.4%. So that is a positive. So the margin beat is actually driven both by India as well as for Africa. Africa margins have gone up, and India, they've managed to maintain their margins. The voice realization per minute has declined quite a bit. So it now stands at 32.42 versus 33.49. That is a drop of 3.2% seen on a quarter-on-quarter basis. We saw that in the case of Idea Cellular as well, where voice pricing has come down, and that seems to be the key driver. With respect to the average revenue per user, that has come down by nearly 4%. Just trying to get hold of what the data growth has been, and the data growth has come in at double digits at 12.7%, while the data realizations have fallen by 10%. So these internals are largely mirroring what we saw Idea, that the telco's focus is on volumes at the expense of pricing. So voice pricing has declined by another 3.5%, data pricing has declined by another 10%, and that is primarily what is driving the data volume growth. But as of now, considering that both Idea as well as Bharti Airtel have seen a double-digit sequential pickup in the data volumes, it's too early to say whether Jio has had an impact, because Jio is predominantly is present only in the data space, and over there both the companies, of course aided by a 10% drop in their data realizations, have managed to show a significant improvement in volumes. But on the whole, Bharti Airtel's numbers look fairly decent. There is a margin as well as a profitability beat, and there is strong execution seen both in India as well as Africa. We'll thank all the gentlemen who've joined us on the show to give us details on Bharti Airtel. We'll take your leave on that note, but stay with us. More on the markets and on the big Tata story coming up for you when we return.